how many times is the word Palestine found in the Quran? The answer would be 0. How many times is the word Palestinian found in the Quran? That would be 0 as well. Now, when people point to this newspaper, which was published on Sunday, May 16th, 1948, this particular edition of the Palestine Post, they'll say, look, it was Palestine. And then it says right here, the state of Israel is born. So people fall for the propaganda that it was all owned by Palestinians/Muslims, and it was stolen by Jews. And this is the map right here that many Islamists will hold up, saying, look, around the late 1800s, early 1900s, all of this yellow was all Palestinian territory because it was all Palestinian, again, as a synonym for Arab in general, or even for Muslim in particular. And then as the years went by, they lost more and more land. So you see in the far right, we have the present map, which is mainly green, which means that's the Jewish area. And the yellow areas, Gaza, the West Bank, are very little compared to the overall state of Israel. And again, Islamists will commonly hold up this map showing you how much land has been stolen, quote unquote. But to get an accurate view of history, we don't need to go back 100 years. We need to go back 2,000 years. Because back then, there was a small territory known as the Roman Empire. Now, it actually wasn't small. It was very large, in fact. And you can see Judea circled in the red there. Because prior to the AD 130s, Romans called the land Judea, Samaria, and Galilee as mentioned in the Bible. But then, around AD 130, specifically about AD 134, after a Jewish revolt, the Roman Emperor Hadrian renamed this territory Palestina. Now, the term Palestina wasn't in reference to Arabs or Muslims. In fact, Muslims didn't even exist yet, because this happened around AD 134, and according to tradition, Muhammad wasn't even born until 570. So for over 400 years before Muhammad was born, there was a Palestine, quote unquote. But it was called Palestine after the Philistines. Who were the Philistines? They were who the Israelites commonly fought against that we read about throughout the Old Testament. Hadrian named it Palestina out of spite for the Jews. Now, in the early 20th century, the term Palestinian was reclaimed by Jews themselves to reclaim their identity. And the fact that their ancestors had been driven out of this territory, and the term at that time referred to anyone who was born and living in that land. So you had Palestinian Jews, you had Palestinian Muslims, you had Palestinian Arabs, Christians, etc., because Palestinian referred to anyone who was born and living in that land. But Hajj Amin al-Husseini, who lived from 1897 to 1974, he was the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, he was a Muslim Nazi, he was the uncle of Yasser Arafat, he was the father of Palestinian nationalism. So this propaganda that Palestinian is a synonym for Arab in general, or for Muslim in particular, is around 100 years old or less, because he was the father of Palestinian nationalism. And today, the terms Palestine and Palestinians are simply propaganda terms used to delegitimize the nation of Israel. Now, why should anyone believe that? Not because I said it, but because that's what Zahir Hussein admitted himself. He was the military commander of the Palestine Liberation Organization, and he said, "The Palestinian people does not exist. The creation of a Palestinian state is only a means for continuing our struggle against the state of Israel for our Arab unity." In reality, today there is no difference between Jordanians, Palestinians, Syrians, and Lebanese. We are all part of one people, the Arab nation. We are one people. Just for political reasons, we carefully underwrite our Palestinian identity, because it is of national interest for the Arabs to advocate the existence of Palestinians to balance Zionism. Yes, the existence of a separate Palestinian identity exists only for tactical purposes. The establishment of a Palestinian state is a new tool to continue the fight against Israel and for Arab unity. Now, folks, he said this in a 1977 interview with the Dutch newspaper Trouw. So is it really about land? Again, this is the map that you will see Islamists holding up. But what happens when we zoom out? We see a bunch of green countries surrounding Israel. What are these green countries? These are countries that are part of the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and there's two other green countries in South America, which aren't even being shown because this map is zoomed in pretty tight, but as you can see, Israel there, the yellow, is very small compared to all of this green. All of these green countries, as you can see, because they are so much larger than Israel, could easily say, hey, Palestinians/Muslims, come to our country. We're going to give you way more land than you currently have in the Palestinian territories. But this isn't about land. It's about Islamic Jew hatred. It's not about land like they want you to think it is. It's about the people, the Jews. And if it was about land, well, let's look at some biblical verses which show us and explain and proclaim the land that God promised to Abraham. Genesis 15:18, Exodus chapter 23, verse 31 through 33, and Exodus chapter 33, verses 1 and 2, and Joshua chapter 1, verse 4. In these verses, you will read the territories that God promised Abraham. And let's look at that visual map. Because the actual territory that God promised the Jews does not only include modern-day Israel, but also the West Bank, Gaza, some of Egypt, some of Syria, all of Jordan, some of Saudi Arabia, and some of Iraq. Those are the true territories promised to the Jews. So if anyone should be complaining about land, quote-unquote, who should be complaining?